I thought I'd say a few things about writer's block. Okay, welcome back to another video. I thought I'd say a few things about writer's block. I've seen some people say, how do I address writer's block and what is it and what should I do? So I've had a think and I've jotted down some notes. So these are my thoughts on writer's block and how to address it, how to overcome it. To my mind, there are two broad ways of dealing with it. So I'm going to divide this into these two broad ways to address the problem. One is write and the other is don't write. So under write, what are the things you can do? I think there are 6 points that I can list. So of the 6, point 1. So firstly, write another short story or write short stories. If you've seen my other videos, you'll see that I'm an advocate for short stories for all sorts of reasons. I think they're the way to go. And if you're writing short stories, perhaps to add to a short story collection, then you can move to another short story. If you're struggling with one, if you've hit a wall with one story and you're in the habit of writing short stories, then you can just move to another short story and start writing or continue writing those other short stories. I have about 10 to 15 going on at any one time. Some are in the very early stages, but it's really a case of throwing text down in the early stages. So first way to deal with writer's block is just move to something else and write. Secondly, write a different part of the same book. You can write the end or the middle, depending on where you are in the sequence, how you sequence your writing. Just jump to another part of the book or the story. If you know something that's going to happen at the end, just write it. Don't delay. Don't think, I need to get through this chapter, I need to do this and I need to do that. Just write the end if that's what you want. It doesn't mean it's set in stone. You can always go back and rewrite it. But if you've written something down, it gets the creative juices flowing, and you might even find that you will come up with some ideas when you're writing the end or another part of the story. Okay, point 3. Short chapters. Try and keep chapters short and keep passages and even I call them mini chapters short. That can help if you're trying to plug your way through a large part of the story. It can be quite a challenge, but if you purposefully keep things short and sharp and chapters short and sharp and aim to hit the end of that chapter, that can help. And again, write these chapters out of sequence. You can always expand it later on at another time, but keep it short. 4. You could draft another story altogether, another novel. You could just put your book to one side and write a scene, the beginning, the end scene of another book. This is particularly easy if you have short stories. If you're in the habit of writing short stories, then you can just move quickly. But if you're writing something larger, just have that next book somewhere in mind and you can be pushing scenes out for that, even though it might not see the light of day until your current book is published. So draft another story. You can even just draft it in very simple terms. Point 5, time scheduling. So what you can do, this is a slightly more practical solution, is spend 30 minutes on and 30 minutes off. So if you've allocated a certain amount of time, let's say 3 hours in the morning or in the evening or the weekend, break it up. So you sit down at a keyboard for 30 minutes and you work for 30 minutes. You just hammer it out for 30 minutes. And when the 30th minute arrives, you stand up and you go and do something else and you spend 30 minutes off doing something else. You can do anything. You can do a chore, you can do the washing, the ironing, and then when your 30 minutes of your chore is up, then you go back to a keyboard and start hammering away for 30 minutes. So 30 minutes on, 30 minutes off. So discipline yourself, so you force yourself. If you know you're just writing for a short amount of time, you might just crack on and be a bit more productive. And then once you're finished, you're finished. And while you're doing the chore, you might have ideas. While you're doing the ironing, the ideas will be stirring and you might make some headway on the story itself and you can scribble it down. So when you do sit down at the keyboard, you've got something to write. And if 30 minutes doesn't work, try 15 minutes or 20 minutes. So try it as an exercise if you're really struggling. Sit down for 30 minutes and you know you're going to get up for 30 minutes or 20 minutes, 15 minutes, and you might find it helps. Point 6, you can edit past written work. So if you've been writing other things and other stories and other passages, forget about generating something new. Just go back and revisit them and see how it goes. This might, again, get the creative juices flowing, especially if you've been writing short stories. So now is the time to revisit the story or the passage and just keep them ticking over. So writer's block in this respect might not apply because you're re-editing. Okay, so the other course of action is don't write at all. So rather than try and write, don't write. Just give up writing and trying to be productive. And there are different ways of doing this. So one way of doing it is doing research, conducting research online. Now this is where YouTube comes in really helpful. You could make the research relevant to the story. You can be researching a place, for instance, if you're setting it in a certain town or a certain village or a certain part of the countryside or a different country, another city. You can go and research an aspect of the story using YouTube. That's always a very good excuse. So it might give you an idea for places and pubs and restaurants and streets and other things. It will give you an idea. You can also research the time period if you want ideas for a different time or something that's relevant to the storyline. If it's about a law, if it's about a thriller, if it's about travel, anything. So research, and research online in YouTube is easy because you can just sit there and watch it. Okay, another thing that doesn't require writing is research, but it's reading other books. So put your writing to one side and research the place, again, the cities, the towns, the country, or the time period, people and characters, or even the genre. Now these can be books on philosophy also, and sociology and other things. So they might feed into your story. So again, put the writing to one side and do some research. Point 3, that doesn't require writing, is read other books for inspiration, or even a guilty pleasure. If you just want to read something that just distracts you. So I sometimes read just John Grisham or some other popular novelists just to get sucked into another book and just indulge yourself. This is where short stories come in very useful. I recommend Ray Bradbury, or you can even, dare I say, check out my own. But short stories can give you a bit of distraction, other ideas, but again, you're nurturing your writing capabilities and skills. Point 4, just relax altogether. Don't do anything about reading or writing, just watch films, watch sports. It's very important to take time away from writing and just give up saying, okay, I'm not going to do any writing, I'm going to binge watch this TV series or, this sports show, or watch some of your old favourite movies, but don't feel guilty about it. It's a necessary part of the writing process that you take time away from it. And the 5th and last point for something to do to address writer's block without actually writing is go to an event, go to book fair, a book shop, trade fair, or go to the gym, go for a walk, do a 10-miler and just walk. Take your phone, take some music, maybe take an audio book or a podcast and just go out and walk, and you might find the juices start to run, or you might have some ideas that help address it. So those are some ideas for how to address writer's block by writing, different ways of writing, and also by not writing at all. So give it a try. And I almost think that writer's block doesn't really exist. It's really a case of discipline. Sometimes you have to force yourself and do these 30-minute on-off stretches and force yourself to sit down at a keyboard. But then sometimes you just have to let go and just say, forget it. Take time away, maybe do some research on other things and other books that might be further down the line. I've been doing an apocalyptic story, Nigel, which is coming out later on this year, I hope, and that's part of a trilogy. But I'm also working on I'm starting to make notes on a trilogy of books. It might even be 5 on a different series much further down the line. That's 5-10 years away. I'm starting to sort of plot that out and think about it. So I sometimes go onto YouTube and watch little documentaries for background, just to build up an idea and keep the juices flowing. So thanks for that. Check out my other videos and do subscribe. I'll set up a Patreon and subscribe star account, but really the best thing you can do is subscribe and check out the books. They're on Amazon and links are in the description. Thank you.